Video and animation overview. Video and animation overview. So what about video and animation overview? By the way, Photoshop various earlier than Photoshop CC. Some functionality discussed in this article may be available only if you have Photoshop Extended, and Photoshop doesn't have a separate Extended offering, by the way, and all features in Photoshop Extended are part of Photoshop. And what about video layers? But what about video layers? By the way, you can use Photoshop to edit individual frames of video and image sequence file. And in addition to using any Photoshop tool to edit and paint on video, you can also apply filters and masks and transformations and layers styles and blending modes. And after making edits, you can also save the document as a PSD file, and that can be played back in other Adobe applications such as Premiere Pro and After Effects, or accessed as a static file in other applications, or you can render it as a QuickTime movie or image sequence. And do not be careful, please, here now. You can work only with the visual images in a video file, not the audio. Video only, not audio. And when you open a video file or image sequence in Photoshop, the frames are contained within a video layer, by the way, in the layers panel. And the video layer is identified with a film strip icon. And the video layers let you, by the way, paint and clone and individual frames using the brush tools and the stamp tools, like working with regular layers. And you can also create selections or apply masks to restrict your edits to specific areas of a frame. And you navigate through the frames using the timeline mode in the animation panel. And you have to select, you choose window, then select animation. And not be careful. By the way, video layers don't work when the animation panel is in the frame mode, inside the frame mode. Video layers don't work, by the way, when the animation panel inside the frame mode. And you work with video layers just like regular layers by adjusting the blending mode and opacity and the position and layer style. And you can also group video layers in the layers panel, and adjustment layers lets you, by the way, apply color and tonal adjustments and non-destructively to the video layers. And if you prefer to make your frame edits on a separate layer, you can also create a blank video layer, and blank video layers also let you create hand-drawn animations. And do not be careful. By the way, a video layer references the original file, and so that edits to the video layer don't alter the original video or image sequence file. And to maintain the link to the original file, ensure that it remains in the same location relative to the PSD file. And for more information, you should see replace footage in a video layer. So what about supported video? Supported video and image sequence formats. What about supported video and image sequence formats? By the way, you can open video files and image sequences in the following formats, like QuickTime video formats. QuickTime video formats like MPG-1 or MPG-4, and MOV and AVI, and MPG-2 is supported in an MPG-2 encoder is installed on your computer. And like image sequence formats like BMP and GICOM and GPG and OpenEXR and BNG. Or BSD, or Targa, or TIFF, and Xenon and GPG 2000 are supported if the plug INS are installed. And color mode and bit depth. And the video layers, by the way, can contain files in the following color modes and bits and bytes for channel, like grayscale 8 or 16 or 32, and RGB 8, 16 or 32, and CMYK 8 or 16, and lab 8 or 16 also. And what about animation panel overview? Animation panel overview, by the way, an animation is a sequence of images or frames that is displayed over time, and each frame varies slightly from the preceding frame, and creating the illusion of movement or other changes when the frames are viewed in quick succession. And in the standard edition of earlier versions of Photoshop, the animation panel, by the way, should select window, then choose animation and appears in frame mode and showing a sample of each frame in your animation. And you can use the tools at the bottom of the panel to navigate through the frames and set looping options and add and delete frames and preview the animation. And the animation panel, by the way, menu contains additional commands for editing frames or timeline durations and for configuring the panel display. You should click the panel menu. Firstly, you should click the panel menu icon to view available commands, like this screenshot now. This image now explains for you animation panel frame mode. And AS meaning selects the first frame, and BS meaning selects the previous frame, and CS meaning plays animation, and BS meaning selects the next frame, and ES meaning twins animation frames, and FS meaning duplicates selected frames, and GS meaning deletes selected frames, and HS meaning converts to timeline mode, and IS meaning animation panel menu. And you can also use the animation panel in either frame mode or timeline mode. And timeline mode shows the frame duration and animation properties for document layers, by the way. And you can use the tools at the bottom of the panel to navigate through frames, zoom the time display in or out, and toggle onion skin mode and delete keyframes and preview the video. And you can also use controls on the timeline itself to adjust frame duration for a layer, and you can set keyframes for a layer properties and designate a section of the video as the working area, like the next screenshot. The next image explain for you now animation panel, timeline mode, and AS meaning enable audio playback, and B S meaning zoom out, and CS meaning zoom slider, and GS meaning zoom in, and ES meaning toggle onion scans, and FS meaning delete keyframes, and GS meaning convert to frame animation. And in timeline mode, the animation panel displays, by the way, each layer in a Photoshop document, except the background layer, and is synchronized with the layers panel whenever a layer is added and deleted and renamed and grouped and duplicated or assigned a color. The changes, by the way, are updated in both panels. And do not, and be careful here now, when animated layers, by the way, are grouped as smart object, the animation information from the animation panel is stored in the smart object, by the way, and you have to see also work with smart objects. And what about frame mode controls? Frame mode controls is meaning in frame mode, the animation panel includes the following controls. We have many options here now. The first option, looping options. Looping options is meaning sets the number of times an animation plays when exported as an animated GIF file, GIF file. And what's the meaning of frame delay time? Frame delay time is meaning sets the duration of a frame during playback. And what's the meaning of twin twin animation frames? Twin animation frames is meaning adds a series of frames between two existing frames and interpolating, varying the layer properties evenly between the new frames. And what's the meaning of duplicate selected frames? Duplicate selected frames is meaning adds a frame to the animation by duplicating the selected frame in the animation panel. And what's the meaning of convert to timeline animation? Convert to timeline animation is meaning converts a frame animation to timeline animation using keyframes to animate layer properties. And what's the meaning of timeline mode controls? Timeline mode controls is meaning in timeline mode the animation panel includes the following features and controls. And what's the meaning of catched frames indicator? Catched frames indicator is meaning displays a green bar to indicate the frames that are catched for playback. And also, what about comments track? Comments track is meaning choose edit timeline and comment from the panel menu to insert a text comment at the current time. And comments appear as icons in the comments track, and move the pointer over these icons to display comments as tool tips. And then double click these icons to revise comments, and to navigate from one comment to the next you should click the go to previous or go to next and buttons at the far left of the comments track. And to create an HTML table listing the time, frame and number and text of each comment, you should choose export timeline comments from the panel menu firstly, and after that convert to frame animation. Convert to frame animation is meaning you can convert a timeline animation using keyframes to frame animation. And after that, time code or frame number display. Time code or frame number display is meaning shows the time code or frame number depending on panel options for the current time. And what's the meaning of current time indicator? Current time indicator is meaning drag the current time indicator to navigate frames or change the current time or frame. And what's the meaning of global lighting track? Global lighting track is meaning displays keyframes where you set and change the master lighting angle for layer effects such as drop shadow or inner shadow and bevel and emboss. And what's the meaning of keyframe navigator? Keyframe navigator is meaning arrow buttons to the left of the track label move the current time indicator to the previous or next keyframe from its current position. And then click the center button to add or delete a keyframe at the current time. And what's the meaning of layer duration bar? Layer duration bar is meaning specifies a layer space in time within a video or animation and to move the layer to another place in time. You should drag the bar firstly to trim and adjust the duration of, and the layer drag either end of the bar. And what about altered video track? Altered video track is meaning for video layers and displays a duration bar for altered frames. To jump to altered frames, you can use the keyframe navigator to the left of the track label. And what about time ruler? Time ruler is meaning measures duration or frame count horizontally according to the document's duration and frame rate. And you can choose document setting from the panel menu to change duration or frame rate, and then take marks and numbers appears along the ruler and change in spacing with the zoom setting of the timeline. And what about time vary stopwatch? Time vary stopwatch is meaning enables or disables keyframing for a layer property, and then select this option to insert a keyframe and enable keyframing for a layer property, and deselect to remove all keyframes and disable keyframing for a layer property. And what about animation panel menu? Animation panel menu is meaning includes functions affecting keyframes and layers panel appearance, onion scanning and document setting. And what about work area indicators? Work area indicators is meaning drag the blue tab at either end of the topmost track to mark the specific portion of the animation or video that you want to preview or export. And what about a change thumbnail size? A change thumbnail size is meaning in the animation panel you can to change the size of the thumbnails that represents each frame or layer. And we have steps here now. Step number 1. You should choose panel options from the animation panel menu firstly. After that, you should to select a size option. And after that, in timeline mode, you should select none to display only layer names. And how to switch timeline units? To switch timeline units, by the way, you can display the animation panel timeline in either frame number or time code units. And we have options. Option number 1, to select units to display. You should choose panel options from the animation panel menu firstly, and then select frame numbers or time code. After that, to toggle between units, you should to alt click if you use Windows or option click if you use macOS, and the current time display in the upper left corner of the timeline. And how to show or hide layer properties in the timeline. How to show or hide layer properties in the timeline. By the way, as you add layers to a document, they appear as tracks in the timeline. You should to expand layer tracks to show layer properties that can be animated. And to show or hide layer properties, by the way, you should to click the triangle to the left of the layer name. And what about show or hide layers in the timeline? Show or hide layers in the timeline. By the way, all document layers appears in the timeline by default, and to show only a subset of layers, you should to first set them as favorites. Sorry. We have 2 steps here now. Step number 1. In the timeline mode, you should to select one or more layers from the animation panel firstly. Then you choose show. Then select set favorite layers in the animation panel menu. Step number 2. To specify which layers are displayed, you should choose show from the animation panel menu. Then select all layers or favorite layers. how to navigate the timeline. By the way, with the animation panel in timeline mode, do any of the following. You should drag the current time indicator, and after that click a number or location in the timeline ruler where you want to position the current time indicator, and after that drag the current time display in the upper left corner of the timeline. After that double click the current time display and enter a frame, number or time in the set current time dialog box. And after that you can use the playback controls in the animation panel, and after that choose go to in the animation panel menu, and then choose a timeline option. How to switch animation modes. By the way, you can use the animation panel in either frame or timeline animation mode, and frame mode, by the way, shows each separate frame, letting you set unique duration and layer properties for each. And timeline mode, by the way, shows frames in a continuous timeline, letting you animate properties with keyframes and play video layers. And ideally you should select the mode you want before starting an animation, by the way. However, it's possible to switch animation modes in an open document and converting a frame animation to a timeline animation, or vice versa. And note and be careful here, please. Now you may lose some interpolated keyframes when converting a timeline animation to a frame animation, and the animation appearance doesn't change, by the way. However, in the animation panel, do any of the following. You should click the convert to frame animation icon. After that, you should click the convert to timeline animation icon, and from the animation panel menu, you should choose either convert to frame animation to convert or convert to timeline. And how to specify timeline duration and frame rate. By the way, when you are working in the timeline mode, you can specify the duration and frame rate of a document containing a video or animation, and the duration is the overall time length of the video clip. From the first frame, you specify to the last frame. Rate or frames per second. FPS is usually determined by the type of output you produce, and NTSC video has a frame rate of 29.97 FPS. PAL video has a frame rate of 25, and motion picture film has a frame rate of 24 FPS. And depending on the broadcast system, DVD video can have the same frame, by the way, rate as NTSC video or PAL video, or a frame rate of 23.976. Video intended for CD-ROM or the web typically has a frame rate of 10 to 15 FPS. And when you create, by the way, a new document, the default timeline duration is 10 seconds, and the frame rate depends on the chosen document preset. For non-video presets like international paper, and the default rate is 30 FPS. For video presets, the rate is 25 FPS for PAL and 29.97 for NTSC. We have steps. Step number 1. From the animation panel menu, you should choose document setting firstly. Step number 2. Enter or choose values for duration and frame rate. Note here and be careful. Reducing the duration of an existing video or animation has the effect of trimming frames and any keyframes, by the way, from the end of the document.